You're right, rational white guy Twitter. Diversity has ruined everything. Oh hi, didn't see you there. Are you like me concerned that politics has worked its way into all kinds of places where it has no business being, like sports, computer games and movies? Well, I'm certainly glad nothing like that ever happened back in my day. I can only begin to imagine how glad Valve must have been to have got Half-Life 2 out before the entire fucking world imploded.
Dr. Freeman, I presume.
I mean, you can't just bring out a game with a female mixed-race scientist lead character these days without one of the rationals claiming that Gabe Newell is trying to cuck the white race or something. And believe it or not, there might just have been a little bit of politics in sport even before Colin Kaepernick decided to take a knee. For instance, the 1936 Berlin Olympic Games. Oh, Nazis, Nazis, Nazis. It's always bloody Nazis with you lot, isn't it? Have you got any arguments at all that aren't just Hitlerium ad reductium? Well, I'm sorry that the historical record is so inconvenient in helping you maintain your myopic worldview, but the fact remains that the 1936 Berlin Olympic Games are one of the most hyper-politicised sporting events the world has ever seen. After all, Jesse Owens' victory wasn't just a victory for America. It was a victory for people of colour the world over, pushing back against a totalitarian regime touting ideals of racial superiority. And Joe Louis became a veritable folk hero for his first round knockout of Max Schmeling in their rematch in 1938. Far from detracting, politics actually added to this sporting moment. Oh my god, this is so boring. The Nazis were like 80 years ago. Alright, point taken. So what about at the height of the Cold War? You simply couldn't have a film like Dr. Strangelove without the inclusion of politics. In fact, the entire premise of the film are the politics that belied the Cold War era.
Deterrence is the art of producing in the mind of the enemy the fear to attack.
And Muhammad Ali's entire career was underpinned by his activism in the civil rights movement of the 1960s.
My conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some poor, hungry people in the mud for big, powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger.
If anything, the fact that he was arrested and had to abstain from professional boxing for a number of years only added to the mythos.
How can I shoot them poor people? Just take me to jail.
How blind are you? Can't you see this guy's crazy?
Can't you see I don't give a shit?
And how many political tropes are wrapped up in Rambo? The ignorant small-town cop, the ex-serviceman haunted by the trauma he experienced during the Vietnam War. This movie is political on every conceivable level. Look, the point of this piece really isn't to point out things that have or haven't got politics in them. It's simply to make the argument that the choice to include politics or not has absolutely no bearing on the final quality, or that any attempt to critique a piece of media based on your perception of what politics are or aren't included is entirely redundant. I don't think it's escaped my notice that the politics mostly complained about are politics that would consider to be on the left, things like inclusion and diversity. Especially forced diversity. Not that anyone's been able to tell me what that is. From what I can gather, it mostly comes down to being a casting choice you disagree with for one reason or another. And I realise that dunking on bad takes about the Ghostbusters movie from 4 years ago is pretty lame these days, and the world's moved on. But I only bring it up because Renegade Cut did an excellent video where he highlights the politics inherent within the original Ghostbusters movie.
In 2009, flagship conservative journal National Review named Ghostbusters among the best conservative movies ever made. But why? What is it about the narrative of Ghostbusters that appeals to conservatives?
I don't recall anyone ever complaining about the forced Reaganism in that movie or using it as a valid reason to critique the work. Like, man, I wish I could appreciate all the visual effects and funny lines in the script, but I just can't see past all the conservatism.
There are two things that make Ghostbusters feel good. One, bustin'. And two, the economic policies of tax cuts, deregulation, and privatization espoused by President Ronald Reagan, commonly and pejoratively known as Reaganomics.
And detractors of the modern computer games industry who moan about the inherent politics contained within computer games these days obviously never played Final Fantasy VII, a game about a terrorist cell who seek to redress a balance of power in the world by committing an act of violence against an evil corporation literally sucking the life force out of the planet, or Metal Gear Solid, a game warning us about the military-industrial complex.
And after my company lost their bid to produce the Air Force's next line of fighter jet, The Metal Gear system was our last ace in the hole.
Warning us that if we continually outsource military power to private enterprise, we risk creating perpetual warfare as a viable economic model.
Secret projects paid for by the Pentagon's black budget. You can avoid a lot of red tape and get a great lead time on your weapons production. And no one can bother you. Not even those bleeding heart liberals on the Military Oversight Committee.
But sure, go off about how the inclusion of politics in computer games is a recent phenomenon ever since the SJWs took over everything, or how the game studios that decide to include politics as an inherent component of the storyline within their game will never reach commercial or critical success. So look, if you're the kind of channel that's attempting to do media analysis as the bedrock of your content, usually distinguishable by a canine-esque avatar pulling the DreamWorks face, and a voice so arrogant and smug that it literally tears holes in my eardrums, then please spare me your bullshit analysis that amounts to nothing more than a whinge, a moan, a complaint that you didn't like a casting choice, or that a film is attempting to portray a kind of politics that you personally don't agree with.
Watch him convince the world to follow instructions, work together, and sacrifice their personal goals for the greater good of stopping the evil president business. Wait, is this movie gonna turn my kid into a communist?
And I must categorically and absolutely state this: the inclusion of politics does not denote in any meaningful way whatsoever the final quality of a piece of media. And if your only critique is the inclusion of a certain type of politics, then you're not doing media analysis, you're doing propaganda. But that's the beauty of freedom of speech, isn't it? It's your freedom to be wrong about just about everything.